So hopefully this will be a very short and concise video. The goal is to show you guys how to set up and use PyCharm. And PyCharm, the fact is, the reason why I'm doing this is because everybody who's using idle is at a significant disadvantage, because the fact is, in reality, in the real world, programmers don't use idle. They use something more powerful. They use a more powerful type of, like idle is a program that's called an IDE, an integrated development environment. And there are so many alternatives to idle that idle is very simple and it's basic, and I see why Bulko made everybody install that, because it's very simple, and it's unlikely that there will be things that will go wrong, and he doesn't have to train everybody on how to use the whole thing. But the problem is that you're missing out by using idle. Anybody who's using idle is missing out significantly on a bunch of features that help make programming easier. And the biggest one is debugging, and idle doesn't have that, and that saves so much time and energy and effort. And especially when Bolko is switching out exams for a project, something that's bigger and will take more effort and more time, I would really suggest getting this. And this is why I'm making this tutorial, also partly because my computer had an issue and I had to wipe it and start from scratch. But the point is that this video is to help people get started with PyCharm on us. But really, if it takes too long to get started and you're having issues, you might want to really consider not doing it, because it is more complicated. It's a more complicated environment, and it takes more effort to learn. And hopefully, my goal here is to cover everything that you would need to know so that you can get started using it easily. But if you watch this video and then you try it and you can't really get it to work the way you expect in an hour or two, then it's probably not worth your effort. Uh, Maybe. Okay, never mind. I take that back. Um, you make up your own mind about when you're willing to give up. But the fact is there's a ton of benefit, and I'm going to show you all that. So um, instead of using idle, this is how we use PyCharm. So I'm going to break this video up into a couple different parts. First, and I should have timestamps in the description. So you're going to want to, as I just uh, did here, I Googled PyCharm, and I went to the first link, and then I went download, and then I clicked on community, because community is free. There's a professional version that costs money, and uh, in the business world, people use it, or if they're willing to pay for it. But we're just going to use the community edition because it's free. And so it downloaded, and we're going to open it. And I won't be making a Mac version of this because the Mac version of this program is very, very similar. It's pretty much identical. So in the installation, there's obviously, this is if you want a desktop shortcut. I do at the moment, and I'm starting this install from scratch. I wouldn't suggest doing this yet unless you're certain you want to go with this, because what it'll do is any of your Python programs right now, because I'm starting this computer from scratch, it doesn't recognize it as an idle, like it would have the idle symbol here, because .py files, Python program files, are, whenever you click on them, they launch in idle. On probably on your computer, but this would overwrite that, so anytime you clicked on it, it would open in PyCharm. So I wouldn't suggest doing this until you're sure you want to continue using PyCharm, but or if you're sure you even want to use it at all. Um, but there is a way to do it later, so I'll show you that if you ask me later, I guess. Oh wait, sorry. I wouldn't suggest doing. Oh, sorry. I want to do that, but I wouldn't suggest you guys do it. Um, okay, and I'm going to pause this video until this finishes. Okay, so it just finished installing, and I'm going to hit run and finish, and it should open up. So we don't have any previous settings to pull in, so we're going to do, whoops. This may not look the same on your computer, but you're not going to. Okay, so just ignore that last pop-up. That shouldn't happen to you at all. It should look like this. If it does happen to you, just let me know. But you would hit OK, and then it's going to ask you whether you want a light theme or a dark theme. I tend to like the dark, so what's next? And then you're just going to hit Start. And now a single project. So the way I structured mine was I had a single PyCharm project called CS303. So that was the whole that was the project was the class. And then inside that I broke it up into completed assignments, the in-class demos that we did. So the completed assignments, the in-class demos that we did, and then the in progress assignments, that was a folder that I created. So I could that's a folder that I knew I was working on those, and then when I was finished with those files, I would move them to completed assignments. And obviously you don't have to follow the structure. I'm going to set it up in the same way I did before, but I copied this from my computer before it had the issue, so this is what it used to look like. So I'm gonna rebuild it in the same way. But you can obviously do it any way you want. So you'd create a new project, and I'm calling mine CS 303, oops, 303E, and you should be able to leave everything here as it is, and continue or create. And then it'll often, when you open up PyCharm, it'll show a tip. Like it's just showing you different features of the program. Oh, you can just ignore it, or you can completely turn them off. I'm going to turn them off. So this is what PyCharm looks like, and it can you can open up a bunch of tabs along the side that may make things look complicated, but just remember it's at its core it's very basic. And here's your environment where the actual code goes. Then there's usually a folder structure. It'll say project, and then there's a folder structure. And this is your particular project that we've just created. So inside here, this is just the same folder structure that would appear on your computer. So if I go to users, so under your user, and I honestly don't know how the structure would look on Mac, but it would be under PyCharm projects under your user, and then that's the project we just created. And you can see there's this venv file or folder. Yeah, so you can see it here too. It's just recreating. All this is doing right here is recreating the folder structure that you would see if you went through the File Explorer. So what we're going to do inside here, what I'm going to do is right-click, New, Directory, which it looks like a folder. It's just the same thing as a folder. We're going to call it Completed Assignments. Let me see. Yep. Okay. And I'm going to create another one that is in class demos. Wait, we're not doing those anymore, but whatever. I can. And then directory 4 in progress. So now I have the folder structure together, and inside one of these I can right click, and this is how you would get started with a new assignment, is you would right click New, Python file. And then you're obviously going to have to name it. I'm going to name this test. And so here you can see it just created a new Python file underneath that folder structure. And this is what I mean when I say that this is the environment in which you can code, is import something main def main whatever, and you see the line numbers that start showing. So now what you're going to do is make sure you come down here to the bottom right hand corner, and you should see this. It says Python 3.7. You should click on this and just okay, never mind, ignore that. If you have an issue where when you click on Python console down here, it has a bunch of red, or it says connecting to console and that never finishes, let me know. That's a very specific issue. You shouldn't have it, so you shouldn't have to worry about any of this, but I'm going to go ahead and fix that real quick and then I'll be right back. Okay, so while that's finishing up, I'm going to explain a couple other things. So if we come in here and I'm going to add another file called test2, you can see here we can see it in the folder structure, but we can also see it up here. It's its own tab. So if we import math in this one and we do import what's something else, I'm just going to pick something else in this one, you can see they're two separate files, and we can close them through these tabs and reopen them through this. And I'm going to go ahead and delete it now. But that was just to show you about the structure of this, a little bit more about the structure of this program. Um, and but there's going to be there's a lot of stuff here that really you would never need to use, and a lot of people don't ever really use. It's just very specific, and I'll try to explain exactly what you you should worry about in this whole user interface, and what you don't need to. So when you start out, it's going to say add configuration, and so let's do something real quick. Let's just do def. I'm going to write something real quick, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I just threw this together real quick. It's just supposed to print some text. But here is where you would typically print it, is this play button up here. But it's grayed out. So you're going to click on Add Configuration. You're going to hit this plus button, and you're going to hit Python. Not Python tests or Python docs, but Python. And then you're going to name it Python. And then down here under Python Interpreter. So there's a lot of stuff here, there's a lot of junk here that you don't need to worry about. But the two main things that you do need to worry about are the name, this script path, and Python Interpreter. So you're going to come in here and you're going to make sure you're probably going to be on Python 3.7. The interpreter is each version of Python requires its own interpreter because each version is slightly different. But the point is you would pick your Python interpreter, and then you would come in here, or you would now this is what makes using PyCharm a little bit tedious sometimes, is this script path. So anytime you create a new file, if you try to use it, you're going to have to edit this script path. So you're going to click on this browse over here. You're going to go into that folder structure that we just created. You can see this is the same folder structure over here. We're going to go into in progress assignments and test the file we have open. So this points to the file that it wants to run. So this is the interpreter that's going to interpret what your code means, and then this is the arrow that's pointing to your code itself. So these are really the only two main things you need to worry about besides the name. And then you'd hit apply, OK, and then you're going to make sure that this, in the drop down, you're going to have it selected Python, and then we're going to hit run. and it worked. So I'm going to modify it a little bit and run again, and it works. Okay, so now you, down here at the bottom, you can see a couple of different tabs. You can see this terminal tab. You never have to worry about that, never. I just hide it. It never goes away, but, and you have this Python console tab. It won't have this red. Mine will have that fixed once it's done here. But that would be when you open idle, when you open this shell in idle. That's exactly what this is. It's just in, oh, Python idle here is in a 3.8 version of Python. Ours over here is 3.7 something. Yeah, 3.7. So this is the same thing as that idle shell, the idle console. Um, and then this run is obviously showing the output, the run result of our program. Now I'm going to be right back. I have to restart PyCharm because this fix requires that I restart it. So okay, and now you can see right after restarting it, this Python console. Why am I seeing that? Okay, this Python console shows properly. It works properly. Now I'm going to show, for example, if we run this, it always shows its result in the Run tab. It showed its result in the Run tab. If we go over to console and we try to do what Bullcode does sometimes in idle, of saying, okay, we have this function in here called main. Let's try to make use of it, test it out. It doesn't work. And it doesn't work because these are two parallel environments. We loaded this into only temporarily into here and used it in here, but we didn't load it into here. It's the same thing as in idle, that shell, but it's in parallel. And if I try and type something in here, it doesn't work. So if you want to be able to try out, test out your, like let's say you have multiple functions. You have multiple functions and you just want to be able to try them all out, test them out. I'm going to explain what you would do. You would go to Edit Configurations, and I guess I was wrong. There is one additional thing you would want to worry about, is right here, Run with Python Console. And that will just do it exactly like idle and run everything inside this tab and not the Run tab. So let's hit Apply, Run, and I'm going to hit Run. One sec. Okay, so what you have to do is if this issue occurs with you, it probably won't, but you would have to make sure that this matches your edit configuration. It would have to be set to project default. You want to make sure your configuration is set to project default. And I know this is making it look very complicated. It's not. I just have more issues than most people because I have things set up funny. So let's try that again. And it worked just fine. You'll see there are little tabs opening up everywhere. There's so many tabs within tabs. Don't worry about that too much. You could close them when you don't use them. But you can see that it ran and gave us our output. So now if we want to try main out, it works. If we want to try out func, it works. So it loaded these individually into the console, just like Bullcode does with with idle. So at this point, this is pretty much all you need to know about. Actually, by the way, I would suggest not doing this if you don't have to. If you don't have to load all of these into the console, I would suggest not doing this. And if you do have to do it to try out some functions, I'd try and put it back after, so that when you run again, it runs in this Run tab. So that's, at this point, is pretty much everything you need to know about how the basics about how you would use Python Charm and how you navigate. It looks really complicated, but you only have to use very simple aspects of it. You don't have to use everything. Uh, so now I'm going to start showing you features and special tools within PyCharm. So I'm going to copy over one of our old assignments, combinations from, I think it was last month, whatever. So this is my combinations assignment. And so these are some of the features. I'm going to end with debugging, but these are some of the features that make PyCharm really powerful and really helpful and can really speed up your work. So the first one is, well, this isn't really an extreme feature, but it tries to identify on its own like individual sections of code, and it shows right here with these arrows, you can minimize different sections. So I can close all these comments. It doesn't actually remove them. It just hides them from how you see it in PyCharm. If you would actually go to the Python file over at this file path, you would see everything we're seeing. You would see all of this not collapsed, but it's just giving you the ability to kind of collapse things and be selective about what you want to see so that you don't have to focus on everything. Now, the next thing is, and I would say this is pretty powerful, is autocomplete and suggestions. So I'm going to try and make use of math. I'm going to up here, I'm going to try and say I want to use math.py. And here you can see it has this little red squiggly line and this light bulb. If you hover over it and you leave your mouse in the same location, it'll say unresolved reference math. It doesn't know what math is. Let's go back. Math. So if you just put in, one sec. Okay, I was just freaked out because it didn't give everything for me. But if we type in math, it'll say import this name. And normally for me, it'll just say import math, and you just click on that and it will automatically, it'll put import up at the top. But it didn't this time because I haven't used math yet in PyCharm. But if you do click on import, it'll give you a list of different libraries, because it doesn't, there may be a math in that one math library, but there are also, as you can see here, there are lots of different other libraries that have math in them, and some classes that have math or make use of math. So we're just going to click on the first one, and it automatically imported math for us. And then just autocomplete in general is helpful, because if you typed imp, see, all I did was type IM, and it gave me a suggestion of import, and all I have to do is hit enter and it finishes it. Same for math. It says there's CMath, and we can import CMath or just math, but the point is that it gives you a list of suggestions whenever you start typing, and all you have to do is hit enter and it'll type it in for you. And now I'm going to try something really quickly. I'm going to see so another thing that's helpful with suggestions is if we type math dot to see what's inside of it, because we're going to have to use pi, for example, to use an object or function within that. So I'm typing math dot, and all of a sudden it comes up with a bunch of suggestions. And here you can see all the F, those are functions. The red F here, those are all functions within math in the math library. E is a V, the V is for variable. Here we can see, where is it? Pi, see, pi is a variable. F, all these red F's are functions. And then C is for class. But the point is, I want to see if we can get rid of this whole factorial function, or not get rid of it, but if we didn't have to program this ourselves, and we could just type dot factorial. I would just want to see if there's a factorial function, and it looks like there is. And I'm going down and up with the arrows on the keyboard, and factorial. and I guess I can just do this, num, and cut that and paste it here and get rid of that, and does the same exact thing, except I'm now using the math library instead of having to write it on my own. And then I guess it's important to say that this is also helpful on your own functions. See, here we have factorial combinations, main, whatever. It gives you suggestions with your own functions too. So if I were to come out here and type comb, see, it automatically tells me that there's a function in here that I created called combinations. And if I hit enter, and then it'll say, oh, this is what you have to put some number. It doesn't exactly tell me that these are numbers, but that it requires numbers as the type of object. But the point is that it auto suggests different functions and even your own functions or variables. You could also do, if I could come in here and I type, well, in is a single letter, so let's not do that. If I were to type in here, it suggests using num, which is a parameter that's coming into this function. So then I'm gonna show it a feature where it can identify syntax errors for you. So it can identify so you can catch them early rather than running them with idle and, oh, it runs into a problem and you don't know where it is or you don't know what it is. It underlines them with these squiggly underlines. So if I do if I have some sort of mistake, like right there, it underlined it in red and it's suggested. So don't always do these suggestions, but if you were to click on this suggestion, it would create a function for you. But we didn't want to do that, so I'm going to undo. But the point is that it identifies for you that there was even a problem to begin with, and idle doesn't do that. So now we know, we can take a look at it and say, oh, well, it's missing the K on the end. Let's add that K. And it also does that with other sorts of syntax errors. If we do a comparison here instead of an equals or an assignment, this turns red, unresolved reference. So we at least know there's an issue there. And then the next thing I'd like to show is highlighting. So if you have a long line of code or a bunch of lines of code and you want to know where a variable is used or a function is used, you can click on a single, just the name of the variable or function or whatever, and it will highlight other places in the code where that's used. So you don't have to do Control F or look around visually. You can just click and see that it's used here, and it's defined here, it's created there, and it's used here. And same goes for variables. We can click on here and see what is the issue here. Variable in function should be lowercase. Regardless, you can click on a variable and it highlights it in multiple different locations. It shows you where it's used. That's always helpful. And then this is a big one, is called refactoring or renaming. So you would just highlight, or you could even just click on a single variable or function name, and you would go to refactor up here. Most of these tabs you don't have to worry about, but refactor is an important one. If you come in refactor, rename, I think you can also get to it by right-clicking. Right-click, yep, refactor, rename. I can just rename this whole thing as cards, and it knows that I used it over here, and it's modifying all three at once. So if you have a cards, let me do this. If you have a variable that was used in lots of different places, instead of going and manually rewriting this cards in deck and then this one cards in deck, you can just find one and rename it, and it knows where you used them. And then this is a little helpful feature. This to-do list down here at the bottom, it's a tab, but if you saw it before and you were wondering what it is, what it does is, if I come in here and I make a comment and I put the text to do, finish this program. And maybe I come up here and I do pound finish the imports. Oh, to do. If I come over here into the to do tab and I open this, or I can go to current file, I see exactly where these comments are. It says that it should say the line and column where these are located, but I can also click on them and it'll take me to them. So if you wanted, if you didn't, it's really helpful when you don't know where to start with your code and you just kind of have a general idea of what you want to do and you want to make a to-do list. You can, this is really helpful and it'll take you to all the to-dos once your program gets really big. And then the last little helpful feature before debugging is surround with. So this is a helpful one. Sometimes I don't really use it that much, but if you highlight a whole block, you can click right click. Oh no, you can't, sorry. If you surround a whole block and you go to code, and you go to, where is it? Surround with. Am I just blind? There we go. Surround with. Click that. It will give you different options for embedding that code within another process, or like an if statement, a while loop. So if I go while, then I can easily set up a sort of user confirmation pattern. I'm copying these over here because I set these up earlier, but user wanted to continue. I'm creating a variable there and another one here. And then I'm setting this equal to user up, and so it autofills for me, equals the text y, or the string y. And then I'm going to run this. And now it's in a user confirmation, and I can say, yes, I would like to continue. Yes, I would like to continue. No, I would not. So that's really helpful. I don't really use it, but I can see how it would be helpful. And then I'm going to real quickly fix this factorial function, put it back the way it was, because I want to show some things for the debugging. But now I'm going to show how you do debugging, which is probably the most powerful tool within PyCharm and within a lot of other IDEs. So here goes. When you normally run with this play button, right next to it you'll see the bug. If you hit that, it will run your program in a slightly different environment, like just how like this was its own environment, unless you decided to launch in configurations within the Python console. This is a parallel environment, this is a parallel environment, this is another environment. Now the thing to be aware of with debugging is that any debugging you do will be self-contained within this tab. So here you can see it did its own console. It has its own console inside of it. It's also got this other debugger tab, which is helpful, but it has its own console, and that's the key idea. Now, if you see at this point, it didn't really do anything different than the run or running within the Python console. So you're probably wondering what the benefit is. Since it ran just the same. Now the key is over here, and just before the line numbers, or just after the line numbers and just before the code, there's this gray bar right here called the gutter. If you click anywhere in here that is not a blank area, or is not beside some blank code, it will drop a little red dot. And that is called a breakpoint, and it will stop the program right then and there and allow you to inspect it, allow you to look inside and see what's going on. So I'm going to put 3, or I'm going to put 2 right here inside our main, and then I'm going to run again debug again. And now all of a sudden you see it highlighted this line. It stopped, it froze. So it started running and then it froze and suspended itself right here. So we can see this console. So it looked like it started to do something and it stopped over here, and it automatically opened this tab. By the way, don't worry about any of this. This I'll get to, and this is helpful. But don't worry about any of this, and you will want to worry about this tab right here, and this group right here, and this group right here. But it opened up this window right here, and now we can see it has a list of variables. User wanted to continue. Well, that's right there. And I think if we, yep, no. But user wanted to continue as one of these variables. It's now listing off, and it's the only one listed because it's the only one that exists. If you think about this chronologically, as the program started and you began debugging, this is the only variable that it exists. It started printing some things, or it's about to print some things, but this is the only object that really exists outside of your function. And I wouldn't really worry about this section. You shouldn't really need to worry about this section. But over here, and we could probably just slide it over. This is what you worry about. This is what you want to worry about. And I'm going to come back to the console, and now we're going to worry about this block right here. So it's got this, which allows you to continue the program, because you've just frozen it right here at line 37. This allows you to pause when it's still running. If it's running for a long time, you want to just halt it in its tracks. You haven't picked a location in the gutter where to stop it, but you just want to stop it to see what's inside. And then stop, meaning end the whole program period. So see, it just killed it. So we're going to start again. And now it froze again right here. We're going to come back to the console, and I'm going to hit continue or resume, and you can see it printed out cards combinations. That was the line right here, and you can see we didn't have a breakpoint right here, so it should have printed this and then printed this and then froze again here. So now, and that should make sense. And if we come back to here, yep, there's no changes in the variables because it didn't create a new variable. This is the only one that exists at that point in time. At this point in time. So now we are going to, let's come back here for a second. Now this is the tab that you would want to worry about next. You will probably use this one and this one the least. You will probably use this one the most and this one the second most. So if you have two to remember, two of these to remember, just remember this one that looks like it has the little staircase right next to it, or the line, the row of code right next to it, or on the image, and then this one that has a little cursor next to it. So if you were to just hit continue, it'll run to the end of the program. And then you hit no, and okay, because we didn't have any other breakpoints. So let's do that again. Or, yeah, so we're debugging. Let me do this one more time. Hit continue. Okay, it printed that line. Let's freeze again right here. So I'm going to come back to the debugger and hit continue again. You can see it added the cards variable, by the way. So, but I'm going to remove that real quick and continue. So it finished, and I'm going to hit yes. So yes being telling it to continue with another loop of this giant list of factorials. So hit enter again, or yes. And then it continued down to this point and froze again. So it should be clear, or it should be starting to come together about how the progression of your program. And this is partly why it's so helpful to use the debugger, is because it helps with your understanding of the procedure, the chronological order of things within your code. So now what I'm going to show you is, let's continue again. Now I'm going to show you is, why did that go away? Is this, step into my code. this will step through just your code. And the reason there's a distinction between this one, step into and step into my code, is because step into may, if you were using import, or if you were using import math and you're using somebody else's library, step into might start walking down inside of, and that's a good way to think of the debugger as walking through your code. If you used math right here and you used some math function, it might start, and you used step into, it might start walking down inside that math function and show you what's inside of that. Okay, cool, but that's not really helpful to you most likely. So what you probably want to do is use step into my code, and that will step one line at a time through your code. And now you can see these comments or this text showed up beside this, and more importantly beside this one, showing that this object, you created an object, a variable that has 52, the value of 52. Now I'm going to continue stepping into, or stepping through. Now you can see this orange number showed up here. X is 0. So it's telling me live that the value behind X is 0. And oh, and by the way, you can hover over it too, and that's also helpful with other variables. You can hover over them and see what type of object it is. It's an integer, and its value. So we can see that's a int 52. This is a string with the value of y. X is a integer with a value of 0. And then let's continue stepping through. Whoops. Okay, so obviously I didn't think about what this was going to do, but it makes use of combinations, which means it jumped to combinations, and then I continued again in it. And combinations makes use of factorial, so it jumped into factorial. So now it's going to progress through this. And now we're stuck in a loop, right? So you can see this number right here slowly increasing, 4, 5, and you can see tote increasing. And so this is also helpful. It's showing you live what's happening with the different variables. And eventually it's going to get out, but this is the key. If you're stuck inside a loop, you could use this, where is it? Step over or step out to jump out of it. But what I like to do is I like to use this thing right here, and this is why I suggested that it's probably going to be the most valuable thing for you, is run to cursor. If you click that, or sorry, you don't want to click that first. You want to click somewhere in the code and then hit run to cursor. It's probably, okay, so we can see here it printed the first line. So I know it's run through this only once. So I'm going to click here. I want to jump until the next point that it runs this for loop. So I'm going to run to cursor, and now it jumped to that point. I just want to jump to the very end. You can see here it printed out the second line of the list. Now I just want to jump to the very end, right before it asks the user to, if they want to run again. Jump to that. Boom. So it finished off this whole list and stopped right there. And now I'm going to hit continue. So, not entirely sure why it didn't allow me to enter a yes or no, but you probably see the benefit, and this is the most powerful tool within PyCharm. It's really helpful, and especially when you get lots of code together. And if we're doing this project that Bulko suggests, then it's going to be very helpful to be able to stop. You want to stop at some point. If you kind of know where the issue is, you know you've got some issue around here, you can add a breakpoint and debug. And it's going to run through and, oh yeah, it highlighted the blue line because it stopped there. So we can see, we can kind of see, then we can start to walk through and see what's going on. And then you can follow along in real time and identify, okay, so it's taking X and it's multiplying X by 6 if this current value is 6. So that should be 24. So I'm going to step over, and yep, 24. And then as it goes through another iteration of this loop, that 4 should become a 5. Step into code. Should become a 5. And then it's going to take that x value of 5 and multiply it by tote. Multiply equals to, and that should be like 120 something. Yeah, 120. So you can, and then you found the error or whatever, or you've realized it's in a different area. You could just add a breakpoint, or you could just, I like to just click there and then hit next, or well, it stopped because there's still a breakpoint. That's why I don't like using the breakpoints all the time, is because it can get in the way of your go-to cursor. So I'm going to I remove that breakpoint so now it won't get stopped on the next iteration of this loop. And then I'm just going to click cursor and go to, and it finishes off for me. And I'm going to continue. Now it's asking me, do I want to continue? No. Okay. So that's pretty much it with the debugger. There is one other thing I'm going to show real quick. Let's add a breakpoint here. Let's go debug. And so it stopped there. One cool thing is you can hit this plus button right here in the list of variables. So you may not need to use this debugger tab that shows all the variables too often, especially when you can just hover over it and find out what it is. Wow, that's a big number. That can't be right. Whatever. You may not use this very often, but if you do, you can also try out things live. So you can say num equals x and hit enter. And it didn't actually put this into your code. So you're testing things out that aren't real, aren't live, but you're testing them live. So it just identified that yes, num is equal to x. You can do your own comparisons, your own checks live, or I could do num equals 52. And yeah, it's true. Or num equals 51. And oh, okay, so it showed the error that would have happened even if I typed num incorrectly. It would have said num does not exist because it's not defined. And that comparison would be false. And I'm going to get rid of these. And you can't get rid of the ones that are all the built-in variables that you created here, so don't worry about that. Or don't worry about breaking this whole program because you tried to mess around with this. So, and that's true in general. Don't worry about messing around with PyCharm too much because either it'll change visually or but most of the time it doesn't actually cause a permanent issue. And if it does, just let me know. And the last thing I'm going to show, so we've pretty much done everything, or one other thing, sorry. So this favorites tab is, you probably won't use it at all, but the structure tab, if you click on this, it will kind of give you a list. If you ended up with a bunch of functions, it would kind of give you a list of these functions and you can click on them and go to them. That's pretty much the only use I find in that thing. But that should be everything. So if you were to close PyCharm, you don't, that's something that's important about PyCharm, is you don't have to worry about saving files. If you close it in the middle of something, you're not gonna have to worry about that. It's gonna save it live. Okay, so it's terminate. It's asking if we want to terminate because there's still the debugging that's running. So let's stop that. We could have just hit terminate like it showed just a second ago. But we're going to just close it. And we just close it and it's fine. If you open it back up again, everything will be exactly where you left it. Even the breakpoints will be where you left it, the little stop signs. Everything is right where you left it. It's constantly saving as you go, so there's you don't have to worry about losing anything. So yeah. And when you want to actually get to that code, or those programs that you created, you would go to your user, or whenever it said in PyCharm, it had that path. No, it wasn't there. Right, this, no, sorry, not, well, yeah, yes, this path right here, or it could have been, you could come into edit configurations, this path that came up in the folder. Let's just get that. It's users, my name, PyCharm projects. Okay, so let's go to, let's close that. We're going to users, my name, PyCharm projects. And here is where all your programs will be located. I left that test inside of, so now I closed it. I left the test file inside of this in progress assignments. And if you open it, I'm going to open it as a text file, as a notepad. You can see all your code exactly how you left it. And if we were to open with idle, open, let's just copy this. Then it opens up exactly how you would see it in idle. And you can do file, or how's it, run module, yeah. And it works just how you would expect. Okay. And one other thing is probably, if we were to continue to run PyCharm, I had everything broken out into these folder structures and into these separate folders. If you drag them in between, it'll ask you if you want to move it, you just hit OK. And now that test file is located inside of our completed assignments and not inside of in progress assignments. So if I close this again, are you sure I want to exit? Yeah. See, now it's gone from this folder and it's located in this. So it's as easy as just drag and drop, and you can move between folders. And that should be pretty much it for PyCharm. If you have any questions or specific errors or issues, just let me know. I should be able to help you with them. And by the way, the Mac version should be pretty much identical. Besides the folder structure, which you should be able to easily find where your stuff is located on Mac, but hopefully that helps and should save you a lot of time, because debugging, especially in bigger programs or something that's more complicated than just 50 lines of code or 40 lines of code, should be really helpful, and you tend to identify your issues a lot easier, just with all the features that PyCharm has. So that's pretty much it.